Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My name is Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your host. And weekly, I present to you experts from around the world. And today we are in the UK, looking at architecture driven by energy management and sustainability. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. Before we get into today's interview, I would like to recognise our sponsors, and we would like to welcome our new sponsors, umlink.com, who are an organisation that are taking the confusion out of energy management. Clean Energy Revolution for their knowledge and their networking in the renewable world. B2B Energy for the 11-week energy program and supporting organisations with their third largest expense. Hark Systems, renowned for their energy software. Alexis Energy for their power management systems based in Australia. Led by Vision, who are an LED and a controls company. Watts for their electronics and EV transition program and the work they do in that field. And in Carbon Black Global for their waste to energy initiatives. And lastly, I would like to say thank you to our certificate partners, Esther Energy. Welcome to episode 60 of Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My special guest today has some valuable insights into making construction sustainable. Our expert today has just completed his first book called Effortless Construction, from the ground up for a sustainable building. So without any further ado, I give you Graham Ford, presented by umlink.com. Good afternoon, Graham, and how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, very well. That accent to me doesn't sound like we're in the UK. Where are you from originally?
So we are in the UK, but the accent's from down under. So I'm a Kiwi. I've been here for 20 years, and I now have two children who are English, and I have an Italian wife. So it's a very complex mixed household.
And how many years you been in the UK?
20.
And you haven't lost the accent?
No, you never lose it. You never lose it. Never.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So whereabouts in the UK are you, Graham?
So I'm in London, and I have an office in Hammersmith, so West London.
Right. And we've met through our Dent training currently, which we're going through that program. I know a little bit about yourself and what you do, but for the benefit of our audience today, Graham, can you give us some background to you, your industry, and what you're currently doing?
So I'm an architect. I design buildings for schools and clubs. Now we specialise in sports and hospitality buildings. Like for private schools or private members clubs or sports clubs that need to renovate or build a new facility. I've designed a boathouse in Hyde Park, and I worked on the London Olympic Games. So I learnt all my skills on the Olympic Games. That's where I really became an expert in sports buildings. And I designed a university in the Middle East with Lord Foster. So there was a team of us working it was a new city, but we designed a university. So we've got experience in, higher education, and we've got experience in sport. And we're currently sort of supporting our clients to understand if a building makes sense for them. So we do a lot of strategic work with clients to try and make sure that they get their decisions right before they even start designing buildings. So it's a new product that we've designed recently. And my vision for my clients is to reduce their energy bills and at the same time reduce their carbon emissions. So that's kind of our big mission. That's the big thing we're trying to do: save the money and save the planet at the same time.
Excellent. And that's exactly where I come from regarding the energy management side of it. Unfortunately, though, when I'm starting doing my work, the building's already up and operating. So it's great that we're now looking at the actual sort of coming out when that first shovel goes in the ground. Am I right in saying it's when you start to decide how you're going to help the organisation?
Yeah, even before that. So even before the first shovel, before they start putting the shovel on the ground. So before they even start putting a pencil on a bit of paper, actually just kind of work out, actually, is the building the right thing for them? And if it is, how does it fit into their strategic plan? How does it fit into their overall vision? What's it going to do for them? So, getting those kind of really early decisions right, and talking about energy, sustainability, procurement, all those things up front, so that we have all those kind of conversations up front, so everybody was on the same page. Very
And
important.
is that from the material and from the build, or the operation of the building?
Yeah, so everything. So how you're going to build it, what systems you're going to use to build it from. Are you going to use modern methods of construction? What sort of construction systems? Are they going to be timber? What sort of innovation can we bring to the project? And then, so there's all that embodied energy, and then there's all the kind of operational energy as well. What sort of energy systems are they going to use to heat and cool it? How can we make it as sustainable as possible? And then sort of trying to kind of a future proofing thing, like what's going to happen in the future with energy supplies. How are they going to continue expanding? Are they going to need more facilities in the future? What's their sort of 20-year goal, and how do we sort of future proof the estate or the complex to sort of for the next 20 years? So lots of interesting conversations right at the beginning.
Yeah, so that's quite an amazing story, really, because when I look at the building, there's no consideration made of the future. There's no consideration of how they've built the building. There's no consideration on the energy management side of it. And to actually take in all of that, that's a big challenge, isn't it, that you've got on your hands? Have you got any experience of actually delivering that today, or is this something you're building a model for?
Yeah, so we recently did a cooking school for a client, and they had bought a building where there was limited energy supply, so the electricity supply was limited. And when and they're finding that they wanted to convert from gas to electricity. So that's the future for sort of, they train chefs. So converting from gas to electricity is the big thing for them. They're finding they can't do it because they just haven't got the energy supply that they need. They need to build, they'll need to, increase their capacity, build a substation, in the building somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's just a disaster when you've got a building that's operational, and you find after 10 years that you run out of energy, and you can't adapt what you're doing because it's a big drama. So I think that sort of really brought it home to me. So we did a master plan for them, and we looked at how we could expand their facility and how we could renovate the building. And one of the things we looked at was energy, and they had a real problem there. So we're having to come up with strategies for trying to deal with that. And how we're going to manage that into the future. So very important.
When you're looking at availability on with properties like that, you can't really just create energy from nowhere, can you?
No.
And even if you could, I'm sure the district network operator would have said, yes, that is available, but that's going to cost you X amounts of thousands of pounds to upgrade the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about in most cases, aren't we?
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's the sort of thing you need to know before you buy the building. So if a company is going to go into a building, that's one of the things you've got to look at. And I suspect a lot of people just don't look at it. They don't think about it. And it's got to be a key consideration, especially, it's important on any building, but particularly in the middle of London on an existing building which you're renovating, and you're spending a lot of money renovating. I mean, 5 years later, or 10 years later in this case, you run out of energy. That's no good.
So, Graham, what's your personal qualifications to be able to deliver this? Is, when I look at architecture, I think of buildings, I think of, the infrastructure side of it. I don't go down to the mechanical and electrical side, which I'm sure you have to have knowledge of all of that, don't you?
Yeah, so an architect is a generalist, and that's a very important thing. It's something to be celebrated in the industry, because the industry's full of experts, right? So the industry's full of experts, and there's a lot of siloed thinking, and actually the generalist is a bit maligned, with clients. They think that if you're a generalist, you're not as valuable as a kind of a specialist. But actually, in architecture, you need someone to bring the whole team together. And so that's the skill of the architect, the coordination and bringing the whole project together. So that's the kind of one of the key skills of the architect. First of all, you've got to design the building. You've got to write the brief, you've got to write the brief first, then you've got to design the building, and then you've got to be able to pull it all together and coordinate all the engineering. And so you've got to have a holistic view of everything. You've got to understand ecology, you've got to understand energy, infrastructure, structure, mechanical and electrical systems. So you've got to know everything, and you've got to be able to talk to everybody and understand where they're coming from, and then pull it all together. And actually, it's a great skill. So you can be specialized like we are in leisure and sport and hospitality, but but when it comes to putting a project together, you actually have to have generalist skills, and you have to be able to kind of, talk to a lot of people and integrate and coordinate.
My background is, again, exactly the same, leisure. I've done a lot of work in professional football clubs. I'm actually working at the London Stadium now, so we've got a lot of common regarding that side of it.
Yeah.
And I've done hotel groups, and for me, hotel groups are a commercial building, obviously a hotel, a restaurant, and a leisure club, all in one, isn't it? Even though you're saying that you're focusing in that, you're niching in that area, you can probably just widen that scope up to look at commercial buildings, can't you? Because that basically is a commercial building, isn't it?
Yeah, well, actually, that's very interesting, because commercial buildings now, like if you think of an office building now, and what tenants are demanding from an office building, they're going to be demanding much better office buildings than they were in the past, much better air quality. They're going to want much better services in a building. So like an office building, they're going to want, they want hospitality in an office building, a lot of companies. So there's, and leisure. So even an office building, you can think about leisure, the gym, you can think about hospitality, you can think about all sorts of services that companies need. But in particular, when we talk about sustainability, I think you've got to think about sustainability in two ways. One, just how, energy and reducing people's energy costs. And on the other hand, wellness and the quality of the environment. So the more sustainable the building is, in my view, and the more you think about it, the more likely the building's going to be good for the people that work in it. It's going to have better air quality. It's going to have better natural light. So it's the other side, if you like, of sustainability is the general well-being and productivity of the people that are in the building. So that's a kind of it's a big payoff of designing a sustainable building, is you have a healthy building and you have a more productive workforce. So that's one of our key focuses at the moment.
Now, all of this regarding the works you're doing sort of like the building side of it, is all this going to come with a premium, what we're doing here?
So the clients, So I think the clients are going to rent less space, but they're going to pay a lot more for it. So if you're talking about a typical commercial building, I would say that the clients are going to rent less. It's going to be more flexible, and they're going to pay more. But at the end of the day, they're going to be happier. They're going to have a more flexible terms. They're going to be happier. They're going to have a better office building, but they're going to use less space. So their overall costs won't change. They'll just have more flexible space, and they'll have less of it. Because as we all know, office buildings, over 50% of office buildings were empty pre-pandemic anyway. So that's that, and I think that kind of follows through for all typologies of buildings. I mean, it'd be interesting to know, like in leisure centres, for example, I imagine that people are going to want to go and work in their tennis club now. Like if their tennis club is a sort of I was playing tennis on Friday down at the Riverside Tennis Club. And I was asking them, so do people come here and work now? And they say, yeah, well, there's a whole room of people working upstairs, but the trouble is, it's all it's not quiet workspace. So I think what's going to happen is leisure centres, for example, they should start providing really good quality workspace for their members. And then they'll spend money in the bar, they'll spend money for lunch, they'll work upstairs, they'll have a game of tennis or whatever, or a game of golf. And then, and actually work patterns will change, I think, if people are given the option.
Yeah, so they encourage people to work to hot desk in these areas. Is that what you're?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of like people will go to the office less than they used to. They might go to the office 2 or 3 times a week, but then they might work sort of more locally to a couple of days a week if they're working on a presentation or whatever. They work locally. If they're kind of working there with a team, they'll go into the office. That's what I imagine the future might be. But I think sustainability is also adaptability. So a really big thing that we talk about with clients is having flexible space. So having space that can flex. So if you design a building, you've got to be able to adapt and change that space over time, because what happens is over a building's lifetime, it undergoes about 40 different renovations, internal mostly. So they knock out the walls, stick it all in the skip, take it away, rebuild it. We just got to try and get away from that and actually design spaces and buildings that can be adapted and changed without having to knock it all down, stick it in the skip. And because that's a lot of embodied energy and a lot of waste, right, of materials. So the future's sort of exciting, but it's it's probably a bit more complex. It requires more thought, but we think the future's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And is there consideration being made to net zero regarding what you're doing now? Is that the whole game of this?
Yeah, so I think net zero is the aim. So if you're designing a building for someone, what you really want is to design a building that so from an operational point of view, they can operate it and they can reduce their emissions down so much through good design, good orientation of the building, good insulation of the building. And that will all of those considerations, all those architectural considerations, how you get sun into the building, how you ventilate it, how you use natural ventilation, how you reduce the reliance on mechanical, air supply, all those things together will bring the energy costs right down, and therefore the emissions right down. Now, and then on top of that, if you can kind of add in sort of sustainable energy generation, that's just a massive plus, isn't it? Yeah. But so we're doing a club for a 350-seater dining facility for a client, and he was saying to me the other day, well, he wants to put photovoltaics on the roof because he's got a great big roof that's facing sort of south and west. So that's something that we'll look at doing for them. But we're going to design them a super highly insulated building that sort of is above code, and we're using actually for that dining hall, we're using wind catchers. So instead of pumping air through using big plant, we're sort of using natural ventilation. We're using these stacks that sit on the roof. And we managed to get that through in a conservation area. We managed to convince them to do it. So so like net zero is the ultimate. That's what we want for our clients. We want them to be not emitting any CO2 at all. That's the aim.
So the approach here is existing buildings and new build. That's where you're focusing what you're doing here, which is quite interesting because you're limited with the existing buildings, but not so with the new buildings. My question really here now is that obviously you're focusing in the UK currently.
Yeah.
And are you looking, or can we take this model you're developing and take it globally?
Yeah. We can, yeah. So there's no. I think what we're really trying to do is productize architecture. So create products. So the product, the big problem with architecture is that it's every building's a prototype, and what we're trying to do is get away from the prototype and actually create a product that can be repeated. Now, in construction, you're always going to have some element of construction that's just going to be guys on site preparing the ground. There's always going to be some of that, but ideally we create products that can come and sit on that base that's created for the building, and by producing better products, every time we produce one, it'll get better and better and better. So you design it. So we designed a boathouse in Hyde Park, for example. Now that was a product. That's a series of frames. It's a kit of parts, we call it. It's a series of steel frames, all got brought onto the park and just kind of got erected in a few days. All the timber panels were built off-site. They all came in on a truck, and it was put up very quickly. But the base was kind of a concrete, it was a reinforced concrete base, but then everything came and sat on it. Now that meant that in Hyde Park, you had less disruption to the park, and the building went up, in a couple of weeks. So I think that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for products that can be improved and adapted to different situations. And every time you put this little, so for example, the boathouse. If I put that boathouse somewhere else in Europe, I go and export that. I can export. We've got all the drawings. We've got all the shop drawings. We go and put that up in Italy. We go and build one of those in Italy. We just adapt it. We can move the panels around. Because everything's modularized, so you can move the panels around to suit the site. And that's where. So that's one way of exporting it. But you can also export the kind of the approach as well. So the whole approach to designing a building can be exported. So you can export the product and you can export the approach. Yeah.
And Graham, dare I say, are you writing a book around this concept?
Well, I am. Yes. So I am writing a book called Effortless Construction from the Ground Up.
Right.
So yeah, and it is based on my principles. So I call them the SPECS principles. So that is S is for simplicity. P is for precision, E is for efficiency, C is for collaboration, and S is for sustainability. So we say they're the 5 principles you've got to have a successful building. And so I have a chapter on each, and I kind of give examples and case studies of, so say if you could talk about efficiency, for example. Well, Hyde Park was very efficient because it was all built off-site. It all came in a kit of parts. So that's efficiency, getting something built quickly, reducing disruption. So if you're designing a building for a school, you want it to be super efficient. You want to get it up fast because you've got to build it in a very limited time frame. And a lot of clients have that. A lot of clients need things built fast because it doesn't disrupt their operation. So if you're building at an airport, for example, you've got to you want to build it off site, don't you? And then just sort of bring it in because you don't want to be disrupting airports. So schools are the same, leisure facilities, it's a similar thing. So minimizing disruption to the client's a big one. And collaboration, for example, we call collaboration our superpower. It's all about collaboration with the client, and then collaboration with the design team, and then collaboration with the builder. So a lot of people don't talk about it, but they don't do it. You've got to actually have that as a core principle, because if you don't collaborate, it just becomes difficult. And it can't be, construction can't be difficult. It's got to be smooth. It's all about smooth construction.
Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, I hope so.
The constructions I've sort of witnessed hasn't been smooth.
No.
But, there's no reason why it can't be smooth going forward. And so when is the industry likely to see this book, Graham? When
so the book will come out in February.
Right.
So
Brilliant.
we're into the reviewing the draft now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's going to go to the publisher in January.
Right. And I hope
And
all our listeners will look out for that. And we put
yeah,
some special posts on there as and when it comes out. So that's something to look forward to. And I do like I have my principles, as you know, would probably know or guess. And I like the way you've built that into the book. So it's very key going forward. And, I like the idea of some thought going into properties regarding sort of the architectural side that's sustainable. And I can trust you from now. When I've gone into these buildings, looking at the way they've been designed, specifically lighting, for instance, there's no way there's any sustainability gone into lighting approach or any sort of concepts. It's all about how it looks, and it's not about how it looks nowadays. It's how it's managed and how we use energy is more important. And it's quite refreshing to, for me to be hearing that as an energy sort of consultant for the future. So it's this time really that I wanted to introduce you to a question that I like to put to all my guests. And is there something that you can give back to the industry today as a takeaway?
Well, I think the industry needs to embrace innovation. So it needs to embrace the digital world. So BIM, prop tech, everything to do with digitalization, it needs to be embraced and taken on board. So that will help with the customer experience. It'll make your building more efficient. It'll make it easier to manage post-construction. So I think one of the things is it's all about managing your facility post-construction as well. So it's not only getting it built, but it's also what happens after it gets built. How do you fix things easily? Where's the information on the building? So many companies don't have any information on their building, and certainly not digital. So where's the digital information? And then if you want to extend it in the future, it's got to be easy to extend. You've got and adapt. You've got to be able to adapt it. So digitalization, technology is important, and manufacturing, using manufacturing as much as we can. So not just construction solutions, guys on site, one brick after the other, trying to use manufactured solutions if they're appropriate and if it's the right project. So not every project's right for manufacturing, but if you can build it in a factory, do it, because it's going to be better quality, in controlled conditions, and it's going to make it faster to build. So, but as I say, not all projects are suitable for that, but where we can, we build it in a factory. So they're manufacturing solutions. So I think embrace innovation and modernize is the big thing for the industry. So that's my message.
And one message that I would like to add to that, as you mentioned it before, is the collaboration, is bringing everyone together so we can collaborate that story from start to finish, basically.
Yeah, totally.
So, Graham, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really intrigued to see this book when it comes out in February. How can we find out more about yourself? Can you tell us how we can how our listeners today can jump on your website, maybe? Have you got a website we can go and link up with?
So it's grahamfordarchitects.com. So www.grahamfordarchitects.com. You can take my scorecard there if you want to know where you're at with your project, and if you want a sort of a tool to help you benchmark kind of what you need, what help you need. There's a scorecard there, so have a look at that. And there's some free gifts and information on there. So grahamfordarchitects.com.
Brilliant. Well, Graham, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure, and I wish you well with the book and the continuation of your course, because I know you've got some more months to go on with that. And we will definitely be looking out for your website and all the great work you're doing in the future. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Brilliant. And that leaves me with just one more thing to say. Please, you and your family, be safe.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. My mission is to have energy experts reaching out and holding hands across the world, sharing knowledge. We all speak different languages, but we all speak that same language of saving carbon and saving our planet. So if you want to be a contributor to Umlink and put your impression on this mission, please go to www.umlink.com. My name's Paul Webb, and I have one more thing to say. Be safe.